Hi, my name is Deb from DG Reads, and I'm here today to kick off my second reading vlog for the SPFBO 10 competition as part of Team Covers with Cassidy. So if you're not aware of what I'm talking about, I will have lots of things linked down below, including Cassidy, who is an official judge for SPFBO 10, and her announcement video talking about her team and the process. I'll have my SPFBO 10 TBR linked down below where I give a brief introduction to the 10 books I'll be reading, and also my first vlog, which already is up, talking about the first 4 books that I read. I am using a spinner wheel to help select what books I read in what order. So without further ado, let's find out what the first book for this particular vlog will be. Screen record and remove the books that I've already read. And here we go. Ready, set, and spin. Okay, we've got Lizard Skin and Sharpened Steel. That's going to be the first book I read for this particular vlog. So, dinosaur type creatures, that's what I remember about this one, and I look forward to learning more about it as I get reading, and I will definitely come back soon with initial thoughts. I've now started Lizard Skin and Sharpened Steel by Damien Lorcan, and I'm about a quarter of the way through, so figured it was a good time for some initial thoughts. And generally it's been fairly positive. With this book, we are following a group of people who have come to an island to search for dinosaur eggs, and these are being commissioned by the king because he's hoping to be able to use these dinosaurs as part of the war to scare off and defeat the enemy. And dinosaurs really just exist on this one island. They were discovered decades ago, and they've been kept confined there ever since. So is it a good idea to bring them to the mainland? That's a question, but that is the objective. These are deadly beasts. No one has ever really been able to go in amongst them. The humans kind of occupy the outside of the island, and the dinosaurs control the center of it. We're following 3 different characters. We are following Dustin, who is a leader among these dead mudders who are going to be the ones who are going in. They're basically an army, but an independent army, as I understand it, and they're known for taking on the jobs no one else can do, no one else is willing to do, and they are under the ultimate control of someone named Mother, who is trying to get in good with the king and get some more recognition and so forth. So this job is a means to an end. We're also following a girl named Boy, and Boy is an expert on the island. She's been raised by a man called Sir, who took her in when she was really young and raised her on this island. So of anyone she really knows the behaviors of these dinosaurs. She's been trapping them and skinning them and helping Sir sell their valuable parts. Sir offers Boy up basically as a guide to take these soldiers in and maybe help some of them survive. They don't really anticipate there being a lot of survivors, but this job will pay enough to set them up for life, basically, to create a business so they don't have to be the ones risking life and limb to go and get stuff to sell. And then lastly, we're also following Ondu. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce her name, but she's one of the middle management, I would say, of the Dead Mudders. She is under Dustin, but she's in control of a lot of the soldiers. And her job is to largely keep things in line. They're meant to be enacting the safety protocols that Boy is giving them, and she's really responsible at that level to make sure everything is enacted properly, which of course not everything is. So it's giving so far 3 really interesting perspectives. I like that we're getting these 3 POVs and we're switching back and forth between them because I think they give a good overall view of everything that's happening. As of this point, we've started to see some of the native wildlife. They haven't gotten to the big scary dinosaurs yet, but they've already had a lot of big problems, and some of them they've brought on themselves. Some of them seem to be inklings that these dinosaurs aren't exactly behaving like normal. So I'm very intrigued to continue on with this, and I'll bring you some more thoughts when I have them. I'm back with some quick halfway thoughts on lizard skin and sharpened steel, and I'm having a really good time with this one. I think initially I was feeling like it was lacking world building, but that's improving at this point. We're starting to get a little bit more insight into the larger world. This is set in a fantasy world, even though the dinosaurs themselves are really the dinosaurs that we kind of already know from franchises like Jurassic Park. I really am liking the fact that we're getting a mix of POVs. We've got the two female POVs and the male POV. I really like that we see women in leadership in here. And even though the kind of head of this particular army group, the Dead Mudders, is a male here, ultimately they are answering to Mother, so a female role, and we're seeing a lot of women kind of in a leadership role as well, between Ulnu and Boy being trusted as the guide and the one with the knowledge about the island. This is both an adventure story and a survival story, and we've got a high body count already. And I like the fact that we're seeing a well-trained unit, but one that's facing something they've never seen. And I think that comes through with our POVs and the way that we're hearing both from Dustin and Ulnu about their fear, but the need to go on. The fact that answering to Mother and doing what Mother has commanded them has been ingrained into them. I do feel like a little more background about how the characters came to be part of this unit would maybe help me understand a little bit more how they came to be so devoted to the Dead Mudders, to Mother. But I'm having a really good time with this one. I think the writing's been good. I think the character development's been good. So I'm eager to keep reading and come back with final thoughts. I'm back with final thoughts on Lizard Skin and Sharpened Steel. And I was really surprised how much this really wound up being a fantastic read. Not that I didn't think I was going to enjoy it, but I anticipated it being more of a fun popcorn read than one that I expected to really feel for the characters as much. So in the end, very pleasantly surprised. I really liked the three perspectives that we get, and also the way that that worked with the plot to kind of keep the pace up and the adventure part of it up. The characters wind up splitting up at times, coming back together at times, and we had just the right number of POVs, I think, to really accomplish that successfully and keep the reader engaged with everything going on. I think the characters showed a decent amount of depth, and they definitely had a story arc to them in terms of how they related to each other and to the jungle and the dangers in the jungle. There was a lot at play with them in terms of their fear and also their dedication to their job and their duties and the need to be successful. So I think there was a lot to the characters. I still think there could have been a little more background in terms of Mother and how these characters came to be involved with Mother, but I think as the book went on, we did get some more of that backstory, and it gave me enough that I felt like it accomplished what was needed for this particular story. Overall, the plot of this book is very much action and adventure and survival based, and I think it did it really well. It amped up the tension when it needed to and gave some breaks in the action periodically to reset at times, and the number of moving parts with the jungle, with some surprises that come into the plot later in the story. And the dinosaurs, of course, really gave a lot of room for the author to play with the tension and building the tension and then having a serious action scene. And all of that was really well done. I thought the action sequences were also really well laid out. I felt like I could understand what was going on even as there were moments of sheer chaos going on. And sometimes that can be kind of a tough line to hold to. And I think it was well done. I thought the writing was really good. I think the author did a great job of giving just enough description without going overboard to set the scene and deliver what was needed. This was a 300, I think a little over 300 page book, and I think it was the right length for what it needed to accomplish. It did a good job of not throwing in a lot of extra details just for the sake of being there. It really delivered what the reader needed to be engaged in the story. It felt like there was a lot accomplished within the length of this novel, even though it was such a quick read. The book itself is not labeled as being part of a series, but I would be curious to learn if there are plans for more books in this world. It does feel like a completed novel. The particular premise of this one and the adventure that this group is going on is accomplished within this book, but there are still questions at the end, or new questions raised at the end, maybe I should say, of things that could be further explored. The politics of the outside world come into play in things. The issues that get discovered on the island definitely leave room for further adventuring, and I would absolutely pick up another book in this world. So all this together, I think it's fair to say I definitely enjoyed this book. It was one that I kept wanting to pick up, and it was really easy to stay engaged and have just a really fun time with this. I would definitely recommend it if you like a Jurassic Park type adventure, but with some fantasy twists to the world. I would definitely check this one out. So to go over my ratings for this one in particular, again, all of these scores are out of 10. For characters, I'm giving this one an 8.5. For plot, I gave this one a 9. For world building, I'm giving this one an 8. For writing, I'm giving it 8.5. And enjoyment, I'm giving this one a 9. And altogether, that means that the average rating for this particular book is an 8.67, which does mean that this now is the book in the lead at this point where I've read 5 books for my particular set of 10 books. So that's exciting, and I am now ready to pick my next book. Okay, the screen's recording, and I do need to remove Lizard Skin and Sharpened Steel from my available options. And ready and set and spin. All right, Dread Child will be my next book. This one is on the shorter end again. My spinner wheel really wants me to read all the short books first. So I will be starting that shortly, and we'll be back with some initial thoughts. I've started Dread Child, which is book 1 in the Dreadmark Chronicles by J.L. Doughty, and I'm about 20% of the way in, so I'm here with some initial thoughts, and so far they're a little bit mixed. The book opens with a really intriguing scene. We've got a man who is overlooking a battle or the results of a battle and looking at the mark on his arm. He's questioning how he came to be here and questioning the presence of the mark on the arm, kind of, and decides to blot it out and basically burns it off himself, which causes incredible pain. And he's hoping that this is a solution to what's been plaguing him, but after the mark is pretty much gone, he still is flooded with visions and he commits suicide. From here, the story begins to center around a young boy named Ket, and this is someone who also has a mark on their arm, and as far as they know, it's just a birthmark, but others are in the know that this type of mark could mean different different things. As we're following Ket, we do see that he seems to have some unique dreams, and these dreams potentially have the ability to connect with other people, even though it doesn't seem like he knows that. So I am finding the dreams to be interesting. I'm interested to find out more about the world and more about what this mark is going to mean for him. Within the opening couple chapters, his mother is questioned about his identity. She's a bondservant working in this place, and she's being questioned because she doesn't know who his father is. He was just a random man, because it doesn't seem like women really are treated very well, especially a bondservant isn't going to be treated very well, and they can be called upon for any man to take advantage of them. We wind up seeing her sexually assaulted, given some false memories, and ultimately poisoned so that Ket can be taken away. I am struggling quite a bit with the treatment of women in this book so far. We've got a lot of descriptions of women's anatomy. We've got the mistreatment of women, and that's just kind of the acceptable thing in this world. We've also seen some priestesses or something like that, and part of worship can be sex, and in that case we've got women who are interested in that, but again, they're there using their body for men's pleasure, it seems like. So from that standpoint, I have some reservations. So I am interested to see where it goes from here, and I will be back when I have more thoughts. I've read another about 15% of Dread Child, so I'm back with an update, and unfortunately I am going to be DNFing this book. I went into this project with full intention to read all 10 books from start to finish, so I do apologize for this, but there are some things in this one that are just making me uncomfortable, and I've made the decision that it's not going to be a contender for my list of 10, so I'm going to be calling it here. I won't be doing a full set of ratings for it because I don't feel like I'm far enough into the book to really be able to do that, but I will give you a few more thoughts. So right off the bat, the issue that I'm having with it really is about the treatment of women in this world, and I did bring it up at the beginning as well, and there was a period of time as I was reading since then where we kind of got away from that and I was enjoying the story more. But we have had another situation where there is a man who is drugging a woman and kind of fondling her and leaving her with the impression that they had sex, and this is done in his mind because it's not okay in this world to let anyone know that he doesn't have the quote-unquote normal desires to sleep with women. The real breaking point for me is that one of the POV characters is a young girl. At the beginning of the book, she's 9 years old, and at the point where I am now, she's just had her 10th birthday. This is the age that they consider the coming of age in their kingdom. She's now eligible to take the throne if somebody needs to be chosen to take the throne, and the passage that really just kind of cemented my decision for me is her getting ready for her coming of age ceremony, and she's dressed essentially kind of like the priestesses are, and she's fully aware as a 10-year-old girl that this dress is meant to draw the male gaze to her body, and she talks about feeling uncomfortable or embarrassed that she doesn't have breasts to fill out the dress. That just makes me uncomfortable to be talking about a 10-year-old girl in this way and have her internalizing her thoughts in that way. We don't really have any female characters around her that I feel like are ever going to address that and call that into question as an appropriate thing, and I just feel like it's uncomfortable for me. So from that standpoint, that's why I'm deciding to go ahead and just stop at this point. I will say there are some interesting world building elements in this book. I am very curious about this mark that Ket has, and one of the characters can see this mark kind of transforming on him, while for him it's just like almost a bruise looking birthmark, and that has me very curious. The visions in the book also are something else that were interesting. This young girl has the ability to have these types of visions, although we do know from the text that women with these visions aren't really thought highly of, so she's keeping these visions a secret. I think the way that she's able to interact with other characters through these dreams or visions is very interesting. There's definitely elements in this book that would be interesting to explore. The writing itself has been fine. There's been a few moments where I felt like it got repetitive, but nothing really to complain about with the writing. I think with this one, it just comes down to the fact that this just isn't the book for me. I'm not someone who's usually overly concerned with trigger warnings, but sexualizing a child just isn't going to work for me. So with that, I do need to go ahead and move on to my next book. Okay, screen recording and editing the available books, and we will find out which of the four it is. Okay, The Burning Fire Rises is my next book up, so I will be back once I've started that and give you my initial thoughts. I've started my next book for SPFBO, so I'm almost 25% of the way into Burning Fire Rises by Jeff Walker. And this is part 1, set in the world of Professor Dark and Miss Shadow. And I initially am having some mixed thoughts. We start off with a prologue in which a woman is walking her dog, rushing because it's getting a little late. She starts hearing chanting coming from the forest around her, and she can't identify what exactly is going on. And then we get an explosion, basically, and there's a charred region left behind. From here, we jump to our main POV character, who is FBI agent John Mathers, and he investigates special cases. The text draws a very obvious comparison to the X-Files, where he investigates things that are not necessarily understandable to the common knowledge of humans. And as the book opens, he's being called in to face a panel of his supervisors, I guess you would say, to answer questions about a case that he's recently worked on and his involvement with Professor Dark. John is rather abrasive, I would say, as a main character. He definitely doesn't have a lot of respect for his supervisors. He's pushing back, trying to get answers from them, and there's a lot of just like him smirking or snickering at them in the midst of kind of this formal setting. With this setup, we are finding out that the government is very interested in Professor Dark and his student Miss Shadow. We also had a quote at the very beginning of the book in which we had Abraham Lincoln talking about Professor Dark. So clearly this is someone who's not entirely human or is not necessarily mortal, maybe, because he's been around a very long time. The book itself is set in a very modern day. So after all of that, we wind up with John telling the story of what happened. So we jump from there back in time a bit to the investigation of this explosion, with the idea that maybe this was a group of people and spontaneous combustion or something along those lines. At the point where I am now, we've just met Professor Dark, and I am very intrigued by him and by Miss Shadow and how they are going to play into the story. John himself continues to be abrasive. He makes jokes that just don't land for me. He's bickering with people at this investigation scene, and in an inappropriate way, I would say. He even calls himself out for some of the things he said as being racist. And at one point, he's questioning, well, maybe I shouldn't have said that. But in another place he says, well, he doesn't necessarily mean to make racist jokes, but he likes to test people and push their buttons and find out if they're going to blow things out of proportion. And that's not really jiving with me. So from that standpoint, I have some concerns about him as a character. I did really like that in the meeting between John and Professor Dark for the first time, Professor Dark calls him out. He says, misconceptions and crude words seem to be this one's failings. So I think I'm going to get on better with Professor Dark. So I'm very intrigued to figure out where we're going with all of this, and I'll be back once I hit about the halfway point with some more thoughts. I've just passed the halfway point in The Burning Fire Rises, so I wanted to give some really quick updates on my thoughts at this point. And I am enjoying it more now that we have met and are spending time with Professor Dark and his student Miss Shadow, and I'm finding their characters very interesting. interesting. I really like that Professor Dark in particular is able to put John in his place a little bit more, and that we're getting some more of the fantasy element as opposed to just the mystery investigation element. I really haven't warmed up anymore to John, and he is still our main character, our POV that we're getting. I'm finding him still just to be a little abrasive, and he tends to just make comments and then excuse himself from them in some ways. Like, I think I already mentioned that he says he's not racist, he's just trying to test people. He makes a case for the fact that he's a good guy because the investigator or researcher that he's working with is gay, and maybe not everyone's okay with it, but he is. But when an offhand comment is made at some point, he's really quick to point out that no, he's hetero. That's it. And some of that just kind of rubs me the wrong way. But I'm still enjoying the general world, the fantasy elements that we're getting. So I am looking forward to continuing on and finishing this one up. We've come to the time for the final thoughts for this particular vlog. So I have finished The Burning Fire Rises by Jeff Walker, and I wound up flying through the last 25% or so today. So I have gone ahead and put my thoughts together, and I'm here to share those with you. The part of the synopsis that interested me the most was kind of the genre mashup of a thriller with paranormal, with sci-fi, with fantasy, and I think the book definitely delivered on that. It does do a really good job of blending those together, I think, and I did appreciate that a lot. My feelings on the characters were very much kind of mixed. I never did get to the point where I really liked John a whole lot. He was still off-putting to me. I think it was truly a matter of this character just rubbed me the wrong way a little bit and just wasn't a perfect fit for me. I did like Professor Dark and Miss Shadow quite a bit more, and so their involvement coming in more heavily in the second half of the book does mean that I enjoyed the second half of the book a lot more. I appreciated Professor Dark's kind of snarky responses to John frequently, and I liked that we got a little bit from Miss Shadow's point of view. There's times where she's away from the men and we do get to follow her instead of purely following John throughout the book. And I liked that we got to see more from her. There is a lot of attention given to her appearance. Even the synopsis calls her gorgeous. That had me worried going in that we would wind up with a woman who was just there to be pretty. But I think the author did give her a lot of agency and a lot of power, and she had a lot of strength in that. So I did really appreciate that. I think as the book went on, we got a little more depth of the characters of Dark and Shadow, and we get pieces of their past and some hints as to their origin story peppered in throughout the book. And I did really like that. I would have liked some of the same when it came to John. The fact that he pushes against his superiors so much and is just abrasive to his coworkers, it has me wondering why he has lasted so long in this kind of role where he's been given a lot of lenience and ability to take over cases and things like that. The side characters were fine. We didn't get a lot of them or a lot of depth to them, but in general they were there to serve the purpose that they needed to serve. There were elements to the world building that I really enjoyed. When we got to the more magical, fantastical settings, I really enjoyed that. When we get to Professor Dark's home, and especially his library, I thought that was really well done and really well explained by the author. Some of the magic elements I think could have used a little more explanation when it came to the powers that Dark and Shadow had that they obviously already knew. There could have been a little more explanation for the reader. With the writing, I think in general it was fine. I think there were definitely quite a few places with missing words or the wrong words word used that did throw me a little bit in the reading process from time to time. And enjoyment-wise, this just wasn't a perfect fit for me in terms of what I'm looking for in a fantasy. I really wanted to be able to pull for the main character a little bit more than I wound up getting, but there were elements to it. The atmosphere and the action toward the end definitely got my enjoyment level up. I had to change out my battery, so I apologize if the camera angle had a significant shift there. But it's time to go over the ratings I put in for The Burning Fire Rises. For characters, I gave this a 5. For plot, I gave it a 6. For world building, I also gave it a 6. Writing, again, it was a 6. And enjoyment, I gave this one a 5. And that gives this book an overall rating of 5.50. So that does bring me to the end of this vlog. I will have one more for you that I'm aiming to get out mid-August, as early in August as I can possibly do, given that I have 3 more books to read, and 2 of them are my longest 2 books. So it'll take me a little bit to get through those, but I will get it as soon as possible so I can announce a semi-finalist for my batch of books. But I do have a few updates. Mel from Cassidy's team does have her full 10 reviews out and her semi-finalist announced. And since we both were reading Dreadchild, we do know that that one is not moving forward in this competition. At this point, I of course don't know which of my books will be moving forward, but currently Lizard Skin and Sharpened Steel is in the lead for my batch. So tune in next time to find out if it stays on top or if I find another new favorite. For now, I will thank you so much for being here. I would really appreciate it if you could hit that like button below and subscribe if you're interested in more of my content, and to make sure you don't miss out on my next SPFBO update. In the comments, let me know if any of these books caught your attention. Are you planning to pick any of them up? Do you have any others from the competition that are on your radar? I would love to hear. And if you've made it this far and you don't have anything in particular to comment, leave me a dinosaur emoji. I will give you a little hint that you might want to check out my Instagram today to see my adorable Kylie dog in a new costume inspired by one of these books. So that'll be up on my Instagram, and my full review for Lizard Skin and Sharpened Steel and The Burning Fire Rises will both be out this week on my blog and on my Bookstagram and uploaded to Goodreads. So you'll be able to find it in all those places. All of my contact information is down below. But for now, I'll leave you here and catch you in the next video.